I went to the Dollar Tree one time many years ago. It's basically a popular chain of dollar stores. They have food and lots of other basic household items, and everything there costs only $1. I was out shopping and had to go to another store as well. It was nighttime, and I arrived at the dollar store after having visited one other store to that point. I remember that I was shopping around and had picked up a few items. When I reached one of the back middle aisles, I noticed a strange person. There was a man standing on the far end of the aisle facing me and just staring at me. He didn't appear to be doing anything other than that. It just struck me as odd. I didn't recognize him and didn't know who he was. Maybe he thought that he recognized me, or maybe he just wanted to stare at me. I ignored him and then I kept shopping. I didn't stay there for much longer. Soon I went to another aisle and then I checked out and left. For the rest of the time at the Dollar Tree, I don't recall seeing that man. So I had more shopping to do, and next I went to another store. This was a grocery store, and it was the last store that I was going to be going to for the day. This store was pretty large, and when I got there, I went inside and began shopping. After being inside of this grocery store for probably 15 or 20 minutes, I saw the same guy again. I entered an aisle in the grocery store, and he was standing at the end of it. It was a similar stance to what he had in the Dollar Tree. This was really surprising to me, but I figured it to just be a really strange coincidence. I actually left the aisle right after entering because it was so strange. Then I kept shopping. I went around the store and I didn't see the man, but I was just focused on the items that I was getting. I only shopped for probably another 5 minutes or so. Then I headed to the front of the store, checked out, and left. After that, I walked back to my car in the parking lot. I was parked sort of in the middle, but towards the back. After getting in my vehicle, I looked around and noticed something. There was a car parked across the way, and the same guy was in the driver's seat of it. This all just seemed too strange to me now. I got the feeling that maybe this guy was following me. I didn't know why, and I didn't know who he was. I sat there in my car for a few minutes, waiting to see if he would leave, but he didn't. He just kept sitting there. I didn't want to leave. I was afraid that he would follow me home, so instead, I just kept waiting. But the longer that I did, the longer the man did as well. After a while of this, I decided to go back inside of the store. I got out of my car and headed back in. I thought the man might follow me doing that. However, when I had almost made it in, I glanced back and did not see him following me or anything. So at that point, I walked around the store for a few minutes. Eventually, I decided to go back outside and check. I started walking to my car and I didn't see the guy. I soon made it all the way back to my car and then I got inside. When I did, I saw that the man's car was no longer there at all. He finally left. At that point, I drove back home. After that night, I never saw the man again. I still wonder why he was looking at me like that in the Dollar Tree, and why was he seemingly following me? I figured that he must have followed me from the Dollar Tree to the grocery store. The whole thing gives me the creeps. My uncle used to own a local dollar store in town for many years. Because of this, I worked there on and off for years when I was in high school and college. I knew the store really well, and I would often work there alone. And this was the case one quiet night. I was working by myself until close. We closed at 9 p.m., and by 8 o'clock, the store was completely empty inside, aside from myself. Things were usually pretty quiet. It was a fairly small store, and as I sat behind my counter at the checkout, I noticed out the window 2 men walking through the small parking lot. They approached the store and then entered. The 2 men were wearing dark clothing and both wearing hats as well. After entering the store, they came right up to me at the register. Then they told me that they were there to inspect the place and had been sent by the city. Right away, it seemed really sketchy and I didn't believe it. If that was true, I would think that I would have gotten a heads up about it. Plus, I would also think that they would come during the day in normal business hours. The men also didn't look very professional. I told them that I wasn't expecting them and asked who exactly told them to come here. They just repeated that they were sent by the city and said something like they were there a day or two early, and that was their explanation as to why I was not given a heads up. I still wasn't buying it though. I told them that I was not going to let them do anything until I had confirmation. The men both then just kind of walked off, but did not leave. They went in the direction of the back end of the store, and before long, they were out of my sight. There wasn't really anything that I could do to kick them out of the store. I could ask them to leave, but I didn't really think they would listen. After they went out of my sight, I asked them where they were going, but I got no response. I was nervous about what was going on and what exactly these guys were doing. So I took out my phone and I called my uncle. Luckily, he answered right away, and I told him what was going on. My uncle said that it seemed really sketchy and the store was not due to have any kind of inspection. Then he suggested that I ask the men to leave, and if they don't, I could call the police on them and have them trespassed. So after getting off the phone with my uncle, I looked around from where I was and I did not see the guys at all. The store was now completely silent. There were a few aisles in the back that were completely out of my sight, and that's likely where they had gone. So after a few more minutes, I decided to go back there and ask them to leave. I left my register and then walked to the back end of the store. When I got there, I still saw no signs of the men at all. I looked around a little more. Soon though, I realized that the only place they could have gone is into the back room. That made me nervous. We had a pretty small back room in the dollar store. It was where we kept all the extra inventory and stuff. Back there, it was cluttered and a little sloppy and smaller than probably most stores' back rooms, but we made it work. The men were obviously not supposed to be back there though. Only employees were. The door to it was closed and clearly said employees only. I walked over to it and opened it up. When I did, I saw that it was very dark, but I didn't see or hear the men. I called out, asking if they were back there. Nobody answered me though. I thought about walking further in, but I quickly thought better of it. I figured that the men were hiding. Instead, I left the back room and I headed back towards the front of the store. I got back to my register and then I called the police. I told them what happened, and they said that an officer would be there in a few minutes. After that, I just waited, and I hoped that I was not in any danger. During that time, I did not hear or see anything at all. Soon the police arrived. They went in the back room and searched for the men. However, nobody was there. The men had left. There was one exit door from the back room that led into an alleyway behind the building. They must have left through there. I went into the back room and looked around, and noticed that the men had stolen a few things. Some other things were also messed up back there, even more so than usual. I'm just grateful that I was okay. I'm really glad that I didn't go into the back room when the men were hiding back there, because I almost did. Something really scary happened to me just a few months ago. So this was nighttime and probably 9-something p.m. I remembered a few things that I needed to get at the store. The closest store to me was a Family Dollar, so I decided to just go there. I got into my car, drove there, and then parked and went inside. By now, at this time of night, things were pretty quiet. After going inside, I was easily able to go around the store and find all the things that I needed. I would say that I was inside shopping for maybe 10 minutes, if that. Then I went to the front of the store, checked out, and left. However, this is where the story really starts. After walking out of the store and into the parking lot, I noticed something strange. A car was parked directly next to mine, so I could barely see my own car. There were closer spaces available, so it seemed kind of strange. As I walked closer and approached my car, I could see that the car next to mine was still running. Eventually, I reached the first car. That's when I heard the door open up. I became a little defensive and suspicious of things because of the timing. Still, I kept going around to my car. However, whoever had just left the vehicle next to mine also went around towards my driver's side. So when I reached my driver's door, I saw a man already standing there. This man faced me and then told me that he needed my car keys. I had a terrible feeling about it. It seemed as though he was trying to steal my car. For a moment, I didn't do anything. I wasn't sure if this guy had some kind of weapon or not, although his hands were not in his pockets or anything, and they appeared to be empty. I asked the guy why he needed my keys. He told me to just give them to him. At that point, it was just a reaction for me, and I turned around and started running. Looking back, this was a dangerous thing to do and I probably shouldn't have, but I ran back towards the dollar store but did not go inside. Instead, I ran to the side of the store and then went behind it. When I was running though, I heard the man was also running after me. There was a neighborhood behind the dollar store, and I started running down the street. I soon ran through somebody's yard and then into their backyard. I had gotten a pretty good head start on the man. I ran through several backyards just desperately trying to get away. At some point, I don't know exactly when, I lost the man. The next thing I knew, I slowed down and I didn't see or hear him. I stood just off the street and went behind a large bush and tree just inside someone's yard. I was about to head back to my car, but then realized that I might see the guy again. So instead, I took out my phone and I dialed 911. I told the 911 dispatcher what had happened. Then I waited there and did not go back out into the street until the police arrived. Then I finally went back to the dollar store. The man must have gone back because him and his car were gone. I was glad to not have to deal with him anymore. After talking with the police for a while, I went home. I haven't been back to that dollar store since. I used to work at a Dollar Tree. I worked there for roughly a year. My time working there was pretty good for the most part. The coworkers were nice, and it usually never really got that busy. I had worked at another store before that would get really busy, and that can be stressful. The Dollar Tree was a little bit easier in my opinion. So anyways, something kind of weird happened at one point when I worked there. I was working a night shift, and I was actually going to be closing the store. My coworker was leaving about an hour before close, and then I had the responsibility of locking up. So earlier in the night, there were a few customers shopping around inside. At one point, this man came to my register to check out. I think he just got like one item and then left. However, less than 30 minutes later, he was back again. I remembered seeing him again, and I wondered why he was back, but it was not a huge deal. After being in the store for a little while, he once more went to my check lane. I thought about mentioning how he had just been here, but I didn't. He once more got just an item or two. I can't remember what, but then he was on his way and left. The guy had really short hair, was about average height, and he didn't really make any conversation during his time at the register. Well, he was back yet again for a third time maybe an hour or so later. This was pretty strange. I still didn't say anything though. Once more, the man bought just like one thing and then left. By now, it was getting later and approaching closing time. I worked for a few more hours, and then it was time to close the store. After locking the door and doing some final cleaning, I left. When I got out to the parking lot, I saw the same guy. He was standing in the grass area next to our parking lot. It was one of those grass areas that has a few trees and separates one business's parking lot with another. My car was parked pretty close by. I had sort of a bad feeling when I saw this. There weren't really any other cars that were close by. I didn't know what the man was doing, just standing there. So I walked out to my car, and I soon approached it. At that point, the man turned to me and started to walk closer. As he did, he called out and asked me for a ride. This obviously seemed sketchy to me. I said sorry, but I couldn't, and then I kept walking to the driver's side of my car. The man didn't say anything. However, he appeared to just stay near the grassy area and did not approach any further. Then I got into my car and I left without a problem. So I remember the very next time I worked, the man came inside again. Once more, he bought something and checked out at my register. This time, it was later though, only about 30 minutes before we closed. And once again, I was working by myself now, and I was also going to be closing the store by myself. Over the next 30 minutes, we didn't get any more customers, and when the time came, I went to lock the doors. I remember that right as I was locking the door, I saw the man walking up. He came right up to the doors after I had finished locking them. He tried opening the doors, and then he knocked on them. I told him that we were closed. The man asked if he could just get something real quick. I said sorry, but no, we were closed, and I couldn't allow it. After a few moments, he turned and he walked away down the sidewalk in front of the store. I went and did my usual cleaning, and then I left the store. I didn't see the guy out in the parking lot this time or anything. Then I left and went home. Now, just a couple of nights later, I was at my friend's house. She happened to have the news on TV and was watching it. And this is also really crazy, because I don't normally watch the news, but a story came on and they were talking about how a guy was caught after robbing a store. When they showed his picture, It was the same guy who I had kept seeing at the dollar store. I couldn't believe it. I told my friend all about it. It was so crazy that I kept seeing him at my store. He even asked me for a ride. I'm glad that I didn't give him a ride. I'm also really glad that I didn't let him in the store when I had closed it. Maybe he was planning to rob the Dollar Tree. I don't know for sure, but his strange behavior didn't surprise me when I found out he was a robber. That was the craziest thing that ever happened to me when working at Dollar Tree. A while back, I went to my local dollar store to get some snacks. It was a nice sunny Saturday morning, and I was going to have a nice relaxing weekend. I didn't have much food, but they sold good snacks for cheap at the local dollar store. I decided to walk there because of how close it was, just a few blocks. Plus, the weather was really nice. So I set out from my house, and I made it to the dollar store within about 10 minutes. After arriving inside, I started looking around to decide what I wanted to get. The store was relatively quiet. There were a few other people shopping around, but not many. After maybe 10 minutes inside though, I had picked out a few things, but was still looking. That's when this woman approached me. I had never seen her before. She walked right up to me like she knew me though. Then she asked me something really surprising. The woman asked if I had an extra room or some place that she could stay. I said no, I did not, because I didn't. I asked her why she was just randomly asking me that. The woman told me that she had just moved into town, and her apartment lease didn't start for 2 more days. I suggested that she could stay in a hotel. To this, she said that she didn't want to spend that much money. I was surprised that she was asking random people at a dollar store to stay at their house, or at least that she asked me. The woman did not appear to be homeless or anything like that. It was just shocking. I said that I was sorry, but I couldn't help her out there, as I didn't have any space. She seemed disappointed, but then walked off. I then decided to finish up my shopping and go. It was way too early in the morning for a random stranger to be asking to stay at my place. So I went and checked out and then headed back to my house. My neighborhood is just behind the dollar store, so it wouldn't take that long to get back. I walked along the nice sunny sidewalks and eventually made it back to my place. I got inside, turned on the TV, and cracked open a cold drink. Just then, there was a knock at the front door. I really didn't know who it could be, and I walked over and was about to open it up. At the last second though, I decided to look before answering. And I'm glad I did, because I saw the same woman standing there on the front step. The woman from the dollar store who asked to stay at my house. I realized that the only explanation for her being here was that she must have followed me home. And that was creepy. I chose not to answer. I didn't know why this woman had chose me, I guess, to stay at my house. She knocked again, this time louder. I still didn't answer. After a couple of minutes pause, she knocked one more time at the front door. This time, it went on for about 30 seconds straight. She also started yelling that she knew I was home and to open the door. I didn't listen to her. At one point, she tried opening the door herself, but it was locked. I thought that she would get the hint and leave, but she didn't. She stayed there for a while, and then she walked around into the backyard and knocked on my back door. I still didn't answer. After hearing her knock on the back door for a while, it soon stopped. Then she went back to the front, but she didn't knock. She was just standing around. I didn't know what to do. Eventually, though, I called the police. When they got there, the woman was still there. She claimed that she lived there and I had kicked her out. I told the police that she didn't live there, which I was quickly and easily able to prove. The police ended up talking to the woman and making her leave me alone. Then everybody left. I was glad that things had been cleared up. It was the craziest thing. Something had to have been wrong with that woman. I don't know why she chose to seemingly mess with me. It was very strange.